Thanks everyone for coming to this session. Has a few connections with Kerry's. How many people were in Kerry's session just now? Okay, so that's good. Because one of the things that she was talking about were labels for things, yeah? And we were kind of reflecting on 21st century skills, unpacking that term, critiquing it. And I'll be doing the same today, although with a label which, a construct which I feel is more, perhaps less controversial, which is global competence. It's, again, a new label probably for old things. The interesting thing about global competence, and the reason I think that it's interesting to talk about now, is that PISA, the Programme for International Student Assessment, is for 2018 they are planning to incorporate this in their evaluation system for 15-year-olds. So this is why it is perhaps more of a hot topic now, because an official body has decided to incorporate it into an evaluation, into an assessment context. So how they define it is, the capacity to analyze global intercultural issues critically and from multiple perspectives. To understand, this perhaps is the whole issue of values, and diversity is perhaps highlighted here. To understand how differences affect perceptions, judgments, and ideas of self and others, that perhaps is for me, the newer element of the three. And the third one is something that Kerry mentioned, which is this idea of critical thinking and engaging in open, appropriate, and effective interactions with others from different backgrounds. So what we're going to be looking at in this talk today, what I'm going to try and do, similar to what Kerry again was doing by asking questions, is what does it mean to be globally competent? Then we're going to look at some tasks which foster global competence, how we can incorporate that into materials. I spend a lot of time writing materials, and so how can we incorporate that concept practically into classroom tasks? And then the whole big issue, perhaps, of valuing human dignity and intercultural diversity, I'll give you, hopes we'll have time to finish with an anecdote which focuses on this final issue. So first of all, what does it mean to be globally competent? In the PISA document, they break it down into, it's not 4 C's, it's 3 kind of big, one of the C's is critical thinking. They break it down into 3 big areas, and one of the skills is critical thinking, but basically break it down into skills, knowledge, understanding, and attitudes. I think it's the attitudes part which is new, because a lot of people have been talking about what skills are required, whether they're 21st century skills, whether they're intercultural skills, whether they're digital skills. People talk about skills a lot in our profession. People talk a lot about the different kinds of knowledge that is required, but people talk less about attitudes and values. And I don't know if you can see that at the back, but that's called a kind of rather neat paradigm that you'll find on the OECD website. If you Google global competency for an inclusive world, you'll get a very interesting report. And what they do is they divide this idea of global competence into skills, knowledge and understanding, and attitudes. And then these are the components, and then the components with the values go up to form this concept of global competence. So let's just break this down very quickly, because there's a lot to get through in 40 minutes, and I want to show you some practical tasks. So that's the first thing. But again, that's something that I think is familiar to us. Knowledge and understanding of global issues and intercultural knowledge and understanding, that's, as I said, something that has been around for a while. They define that, and I think this is quite interesting, the way they define knowledge and understanding of global issues. They say implying familiarity with the most important issues which cut across national boundaries. I think that's, again, a useful definition, something we'll be looking at in detail in a moment, and different areas related to that, climate change, migration, poverty, etc. And the capacity to understand the interrelationships between these issues, these global trends. And intercultural knowledge understanding, less complex for us, I think less, obviously, is something very familiar, involving reflecting on one's own culture and seeing similarities and differences between your own culture and a target culture or world cultures. So that's the first area. Then the skills, again, analytical and critical thinking, the ability to interact respectfully and appropriately, empathy, flexibility. And applying critical thinking to a global or intercultural problem requires recognizing that your assumptions may influence the evaluation process, acknowledging that your beliefs and judgments are always contingent and dependent upon your own cultural affiliations and perspectives. So again, it's heavy definitions, but I think as I was reading this document, I was kind of nodding. This all sounds good to me. This sounds very positive for 15-year-olds to be able to acquire this kind of skill and understanding and empathy. It kind of rang true as something that we really do, especially in today's age, need to incorporate. So let's look at tasks which foster global comms. And like Kerry, I'm going to do it with an image, and we're going to ask questions about this image. But it's an image which I've chosen specifically because I think it addresses a lot of these issues that we've been looking at here. And it's one of those magic images that occasionally one finds, and you suddenly think, yeah, this ticks all the right boxes. Now, depending on your cultural background and prior knowledge, you may recognize this image, in which case, because you may recognize it because of certain indicators in the image, certain clues in the image. But like with Kerry's session, it's not about the right answer, it's about reflecting and getting to an answer that is more important than identifying the answer. So here is the image, okay? Okay, I want you to look at that image carefully. All the different ingredients in the image are important for you to sort of assimilate. I'm going to ask you some questions about this image. Okay. What's in red are basically the sort of central tenets of critical thinking. Yeah. So these are classic critical thinking questions. So where is this place? So that would be you'll be working on choice, prior knowledge. How do you know the evidence within the image that gives you the clues? What are the people doing? What is surprising? That's a bit of slightly leading. I'm asking you that there is an element of surprise there. It's a kind of clue, and that's also working with assumptions that you may have, previous assumptions. And how does this, and this is the really critical question, how does this compare with other images of such places? So in order to get to that, you have to identify what kind of place this is. Okay, so let's go back and look at the image again. See if you can keep those in your mind. So where is the place? How do you know? What are the people doing? Why is that surprising? And how does this compare with other images that you may have seen of such places? Just put your hand up if you know or have a very good idea. 3 or 4 of you, yeah. 5 of you. Okay, so that's interesting. That's all because of, as we know, prior knowledge and exposure to these kinds of images. And those people then who do know, don't say anything right now because I'm very interested in different answers that we're getting and why we're getting those answers. So anybody like to say where it is, where they think it is? Mexico. Yeah, okay. You're very sure about that. How do we know? So what clues in that image? Okay, so you're interested in beer. Or you know your beer. Yeah, that's the biggest, because so it's right in the middle of the image, isn't it? So we see Tecate. Tecate is you have to know, you'd have to have prior knowledge. It's not a beer you can get easily in Britain, for example, I don't think, but it's a beer that is well known in Mexico. Anything else that indicates Mexico to us? The people? The mountains, yeah, the landscape, the earth maybe, kind of red, these mountains here, very clear blue sky, colors. The cars, yeah, okay. What are the people doing? What is surprising about this? They're playing volleyball, yeah, so you can see the ball there. The ball is there, so they're playing volleyball. Why could this be surprising? It doesn't look like a real net, yeah? Well, it is a net. It's something that's being used as a net.
Is it border? It's something that's dividing them.
Yes, exactly. And so how have you got to, because you didn't have much of an idea, Francis, did you? But what's really interesting is how you get to that answer. Can you kind of reflect how you got there? Which connections did you make?
We worked out it was Mexico.
Yeah.
Beer. And then when we realised we were playing volleyball, it clearly isn't a net, a fence, something dividing them.
That's right.
It looks like there's police cars there.
Okay, well, you are right. It is the border. And maybe the most important question is the last one. Because why was this image sort of disseminated? So why was this, I mean, I came across this image. How did I come across it? Well, because it was an image that became kind of well known, because it is different, because there's something about it which distinguishes it. But how does it compare with other images of such places? It makes you feel good, this image. And yet, how many images of this particular border that you see online or in general make you feel good? Not very many, right? So I'll just tell you then what it is. This is the context. It's in Naco, Arizona, Naco, Sonora in Mexico. It's actually the same, the city has, the town has the same name. And there you can see, it's called volleyball. Locals are using US-Mexico border fence as a giant volleyball net. It's an annual tradition. But let's just look at, well, this is an interesting question, the whole dimensions of viewing. Again, I'm very interested in the whole visual thing. The image is a great way to trigger this kind of reflection. And I think what's very important are these three dimensions of viewing. The affective dimension, that's the first dimension. When you see any image, you have an affective response. Is it a positive image? Is it a negative image for you? How does it make you feel? That's absolutely crucial. Then the composition, all the different things that Francis was talking about, all the different elements. How do I know that it's the border? You can look at an image for a very long time. If there's enough in there, the issue of composition is very important. Especially today, people are taking images with their smartphones. Have you seen how they do it? You yourselves do that? Framing it, reframing it. This kind of thing, composition is more and more important. And then the critical one comes. You can't jump to the critical without going through the affective and the composition, yeah? That's the three-step approach. But what's exactly what we've done with that? Well, it's not, you don't realize you're doing it, but that's how you respond to images, those three ways of responding. Interestingly, I'm talking about critical thinking, you would imagine that Wikipedia, well, would have a neutral image. How do you have a neutral image of the border? This aerial view is not a neutral image perhaps there are no neutral images, but that's the challenge for an online resource like Wikipedia. How do you choose an image, which is the first image? If you go to the site and you put Mexico-US border, that's the first one that comes up, which in itself is interesting. There are far worse. This one is far worse. This is also on the Wikipedia site, and here you've got, just look at that image and look at the affective, compositional, and critical. This is much more, you'll see far more images of the US-Mexican border like that than the one of Naco, Arizona, yeah? And that's the point, I think. The image itself, encourages you to reflect on all those issues, the issue of, how this particular part of the world is presented to us in the media and how that influences the way we think about the political situation. But the next step would be then, if I was doing this in class, to get students finding other borders, other images of borders, and what they say about that part of the world. Yeah? So it could be a project, or it could be something students could bring in their own images that they found, and students could then guess where they are and why. Any idea where this could be? Somewhere I've been recently, very close to here. It's not, to give you a clue, it's the contrast between this green and this desolate, sort of burnt kind of landscape. It's Haiti and the Dominican Republic. So, it's that island there, where obviously the Dominican Republic, I've just been there recently, which is this, green kind of paradise, and then look over the border, and literally, it's just desolate. It's a very strong contrast because it's the natural world. It's not actually, the landscape is actually exactly the same. It's the same island, and yet obviously the investment is into protecting the environment is enormously different. Well, this one, this is the I'm not sure it's the right pronunciation, Øresund Bridge between Denmark and Sweden. Okay, so this actually it's 8 kilometers long between Copenhagen and Malmö. So again, you can come to your own conclusions, right, about why these borders are so different. This is an open border, of course, not just an open border, but there's actually an open bridge linking these two cities. Very important, that bridge. In fact, going to Malmö is a bit like, just going to another Danish city, and vice versa for them. So what we're doing then, can you see that those three, the way the global competence was broken down, we can see that, I think, knowledge and understanding of global issues, it ticks that box. The issue of the US and Mexico is a very important issue. It has contemporary relevance. At the moment, it has even more contemporary relevance with people like Trump around. The second mention he gets this morning. Intercultural knowledge and understanding is the reflection on different world borders that you may be able to access, including your own country's borders. And then analytical and critical thinking, comparison of different images of US-Mexican border and context where images may be found. I think so. Can you see that that's how I with that, just with one image, you can explore all those different elements that are defined as skills and knowledge, the central ideas of global competence, as stipulated by the OECD. Here's another one, another activity. This is not a Cambridge book or my book. It's a piece of material that I want to critique, okay? I want to attack. But I want to attack it because it's called Culture on the Table, and it's looking to be, just from the image and just from the look of it, it seems to be encouraging intercultural competence and critical thinking. Well, very superficially, if you did a flick through, you might think that. This is still, perhaps not so much as in the old days, nowadays, but this is still part and parcel of many English language teaching materials. You have an attempt to kind of include cultural elements which are from other countries. But notice here that the burger is bigger, is at the top, and that the other foods are smaller. This text about McDonald's is, you don't need to read it. Just by seeing Fast Food Pioneer, you can tell that it's a completely uncritical text about just statistical information about McDonald's. And then on the next page, it just turns out that's a context for the passive voice. So the only time the students actually focus on anything to do with their culture is when they write a description of a dish in their country. But that's the double-page spread. This corresponds to a tiny part of that double-page spread. So we don't need to look at McDonald's, but if we did, we could clearly say, as I said before, that this is a company adopting a glocal strategy. So that means when you walk into McDonald's in Mexico, it's going to be different to walking into McDonald's in Taiwan, or it's going to be different to walking into McDonald's in Cambridge, right? But so one idea, therefore, would be to get students to find, anybody from Turkey here? So Mukturko, for example, so the idea that what McDonald's does is incorporate local tastes into their, so the burgers in McDonald's look more like kebabs. Or in Mexico again, I don't know if they still have molletes with pico de gallo, that stuff that you find on every single Mexican dish, which is this kind of onions and peppers. So that's an idea that you could get students to focus, okay, how is it in my country? And then look at other examples from different cultures. Because by doing that, this is a much lighter area, of course, but you're seeing the whole concept of how the company has had to incorporate, so it's a top-down thing, has had to incorporate elements from local tradition, local tastes into their branding, into their identity in that country. If they didn't do that, they wouldn't be as successful. And I live in Spain, and just from my context, if you might be interested to know, this is in Spain, but it's McDonald's goes for haute cuisine with Dani Garcia. So what they've done in Spain is that they have got this chef, a very famous chef. He has a Michelin star restaurant in Spain, in order to kind of endorse their products, and so they have a kind of Dani Garcia burger. And so all the restaurants there are becoming kind of luxury restaurants. Yeah, it's just an idea. Why are they doing that? Why would they be doing that? It's not a very difficult question, but for students, why would McDonald's want to be interested in this? Just to change their image, yeah? So they have a bad image, negative image of, trashy food, which is bad for you. Get someone like him along, and this is just basic marketing, isn't it? But this is the kind of thing which I think we could get students to reflect on in a kind of lighter way. So looking at that, again, with our three kind of central ideas, we could see how this approach also would work. So knowledge and understanding global issues, the whole concept of glocal marketing, globalized brands, intercultural knowledge and understanding, comparison of these different brands in different cultures, and then the whole more analytical, critical thinking approach. Where do these marketing ideas come from? Incorporating, we haven't got much time, I've just realized, but incorporating global competence into materials, just going to give you a couple of examples of this, how we have done it. And this is an interesting quote from, this is the book that I use. This is in the MA I teach in materials writing. We teach with this kind of Bible. And this is Alan Pulvernis. And I like very much how, I think when he uses this term small culture, this comes from Adrian Holiday, that this is a lovely idea, this idea of the small culture of the classroom, that you with your learners we talk about different culture, culture with a capital C, culture with a small c. The small culture of the classroom is the identity, the kind of relationship you develop with your learners in this space, this shared space. And I do like that very much, that as a kind of one way of kind of judging material is evaluating it, is by analysing to what extent do you engage with that small culture, with the people's interests and in the classroom. So just a couple of things that we've done. This is from Eyes Open. This is just again kind of challenging stereotypes about Britain and that students around the world may have. What would be typical English food, and then you show this place called Zaza Bazaar, which is the largest restaurant in Britain apparently, which is a kind of emporium. It's in Bristol. It's this kind of emporium of restaurants from all different parts of the world, which may challenge many stereotypes or many ideas, concepts that students may have of Britain. So you can look that up. That's all the different kinds of foods that exist in that place. Talking about noodles, Francis mentioned from the H-Space, using adverts like this. So this is the concept of noodles in China, in Thailand and Japan, but they're all called noodles, but they all have a different meaning. And this one from English Unlimited, again looking at the concept of tea. Okay, so what is tea? Tea is very important in this country, analysing these different cultural constructs and what different significance and meaning they can have in different countries. So obviously, I think this is an interesting approach to looking at the whole, not just the issue of tea culture with a capital C, but how people drink tea, when they drink tea, how, with whom, why. Yeah, the whole process of drinking it. Somewhere like Turkey, people are drinking tea continuously. Yeah. Another example from English Unlimited. This is from the advanced level, and this is looking at football. So football rivalries in different countries. Again, what's the significance? What's the relationship? The rivalry between Galatasaray, Fenerbahce, or Inter Milan and Milan, and Boca Juniors and River Plate. And again, this idea of things that people don't necessarily would occur to them to compare in materials. I think this is one way that we can encourage global competence. I've got lots more slides, but I've obviously gone over time. So I'll just finish with the final point, which I think which we haven't touched on, which is this issue of valuing human dignity and cultural diversity, which is inherent in this concept of global competence. And I think one of the very, very key points, one of the things we incorporated into, this is from the OECD, one of the things we incorporated into English Unlimited was this idea of interviewing. In the opening unit, I found an article from The Guardian, which was a photo reportage of different kids that were brought up were born in different countries, brought up in London. And we just interviewed them. They were just interviewed and the photos were taken. And we got permission to use this. I think this is a perfect kind of context. Born everywhere, raised in Britain. They found a kid from every country in the world except North Korea. And that's the kind of material that I think is great to incorporate, if we can, to incorporate into materials, full of quotations like this. And I think this helps enormously in avoiding what we call othering. So my final thing, this comes from Adrian Holiday again, which is, if he's very interesting to analyse this comes from his article called Small Cultures. You can download that from the internet. He talks about this idea of how we otherize or other cultures, how we stereotype them, we explain their cultural differences through emphasizing their differences. And it's something we do all the time. And I think finding material, like we've seen before, maybe at the Mexican-US border, or material like this from The Guardian, looking at how these kids are being brought up in Britain, but from every country in the world, challenging these kinds of stereotypes, and is one way forward. I'll just finish with that quote with you, which is, I wanted to finish with a story of when I was in Mexico recently. I actually was with a rep from Cambridge University Press in Mexico, and he told me this extraordinary story, which again I think is a very important idea of respecting values, different people's values and diversity, is just listening to their stories. I will make that available. What I'll do is, this is a new talk, so I shall upload it onto my website, which I'll give you in a moment, and you can download that. and the transcript of that story. I wanted to share that with you, but I haven't had time to show it to you. But I think that's a nice final quote. And this can be downloaded from here. That's my website, bengoldstein.es. I shall upload this talk on global competence there, and I'll include the story from Eric, which we haven't been able to see. Thank you very much.